Is joining us from the Netherlands. This past weekend, his club basically won the national competition. Vuyisile Mbula, former Dale College, former Bishop's coach. I think you were involved with UCT at one point as well, if I'm not mistaken. But congratulations, Vij. Yeah, man, take us through it. Basically, I mean, celebrations hung over this Sunday. How are you? Congratulations once again. And how was it building up into this particular final? Because it was highly contested, very difficult conditions as well. But yeah, just take us through it. You've won it 3 times now. And yeah, being in the Netherlands, how is it for you and the rugby? How much has that improved over the past couple of years?
Wow, there's a lot to uncover. So I hope I hit all your questions. And if I do forget something, please just kindly remind me.
No worries.
I mean, first of all, thank you for having me over. Appreciate it. How was it? Was of course, it was a very tough game against The Hague. The build-up, I think from us, it was a little bit tougher because The Hague itself is a talented team. They have so many talented players that they can play different style. So you don't know what you want to get. Where previously, where we played Emland in the semi-final, you sort of know what they want to bring on the table. So there was no surprises there. So I think the preparation of the game was more on, we love tit, which means we love defense, time and tackle. That was our backbone. Trust our defense. And also we looked on the previous results with The Hague. The Hague never outscored us. We never had a big score against The Hague. When we lost, it was always about 1 point or 2 points. So we knew that, we could match them, mano a mano. And, and then of course, on those days, you're hoping for the lucky bounce of a ball, a call from the ref that goes your way. And yesterday, everything went our way. Oh, and thank God the weather also went our way. It was wet, so those boys could not run or play as much as they can. Because, like I said previously, The Hague is such a running team. We call them the Fijians of Holland. They can do anything with the ball.
Yeah, fair enough.
They're flying Dutchmen, So
no, fair enough. And then with regards to the product on the field, I mean, you've been here for some time now. What do you think with regards to how the rugby has improved in this country?
Oh, it has evolved and has improved immensely. Because nowadays you have a lot of young guys from Holland that are playing rugby outside of their country, which helps with the development and the quality of play, and also been challenged skill set wise. And we have a few boys now playing in France. We had a couple of boys. You have Kai van Kampen. He played up at Grey PE. He played fly half. They made the Craven Week. That's a talent they have. We have guys up. We had a few boys that played up in Northwood, up in Durban. That were playing actually yesterday in the final from The Hague. From us, we had a guy, Vickers, who's currently playing up in Wales. Yeah, about 3 of those boys are playing in Wales. So having such a large number of those kids playing abroad and bringing that experience back to the national level and to the club level, so that sort of help. As you can also see with under 20s, they they qualified for the 20 World Cup. They'll be up in Scotland, and the girls are also going up to Dubai to to qualify for the Women's World Cup, which shows the strength and the depth and of development within the country. And of course, having all the rugby academies in different regions also helps.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Thanks, Mr. Vij. And thank you for also making time to join us at such short notice. But
pleasure, all mine.
Congratulations once again. Send my regards to Gareth as well, to you and the club and the players. And
Appreciate it.
See you next season.
Definitely see you next season, but I'll be on the sidelines. Decided to spend time with the family, so I won't be coaching senior rugby next season. It was my last one at Hoy, so time to spend time with my beautiful daughters. So
all right,
I'll be definitely watching though.
All right, fantastic. Congrats once again. You've won it 3 times. And very brilliant career as well within the rugby aspect. And thanks, Vij, for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right, Vickers Miranda, the man who hasn't been around for some time. Vickers, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good, brother. Very good. Not too bad on my side. Been up and down. Yes, did a lot of traveling these last 4 weeks, so I can finally get some rest on a Sunday.
Yeah, fair enough. And rest and joining the Rugby Scoop. Very good. Jade, how are things that side? Can you hear us?
No, I can hear. When you said rest there, I was waiting for the in peace to come, but I just thought, oh man, you can't be rest in peace.
Technical difficulties there in Bloemfontein. Anyway, gentlemen, let's get the show on the road. Plenty to chat about. Damian Willemse has been sidelined for 4 months, so which means he misses out on a few Bok tests. Richie Mwanga picks up his 12th domestic trophy with the Japanese side Brave Lupus. And then you've got Jasper Visser, who also will miss the international season due to copping a red card for foul play last week. And you've got Mani Lebok, who has re-signed for another 3 years or 3-year extension to his current contract with the Stormers, which is pretty good for the Stormers to have to be able to keep such talent back home, back in Cape Town. You've got Tyrone Green, who came into the news this week regarding who he would like to play for, but he did suggest that South Africa is still the first choice, and then obviously if England call him up, then obviously he'll probably sway or want to join that particular international side, I guess. And then you've got Chris Clutie, who's also retired in international rugby or club rugby. He was playing for Bath this past season. I think, Vuyo, you've coached Chris Clutie at the Kings, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Fair enough. So he is retired. But today we're going to focus on the Sharks final against Gloucester. We're going to focus on Leicester versus Toulouse and then touch on our Rugby DNA series. We've got France and Italy this week. I think next week's one is also going to be I highly recommend next week's one as well with the Rugby DNA. But kicking things off, Vickers, did you get to watch the Sharks versus Gloucester on Friday?
Yeah, so I did. Look, I think based on the game itself, it was always going to be one of those tough games to watch and obviously to understand, because both teams are not really doing quite well in their domestic competitions. For example, South Africa, of course, it's a URC, we call it that now. But you see, the Sharks just knew one thing. They came in, they knew that they're going to need to be dominant with their forwards. And I think when you look at how dominant was Vincent, Ox, and Bonambi up front. It was really one of those games where it was actually won at the front. Yes, the backs did enjoy a couple of good balls, and backs, obviously having quality backs also helps. So I think just overall, the Gloucester couldn't stand the pressure and obviously the dominance from the Sharks. So yeah, so in that sense, from my side, I think it was truly deserved by the Sharks, just the way they came out, but in that game, and also, I mean, it just goes to show that they've been saying that they want this one, and they came out there and they gave us quite a good watch.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think in that first opening 10 minutes or to 15 minutes, they were under the pump a bit in terms of being tested defensively, and I think they stood up and they basically closed Gloucester off with every attempt. Even Itzabeth with one of the sliding try prevention tackles that came out from one of the pundits from the UK as well. I mean, unwarranted call there to call that foul play. But anyway, I thought Sharks were immense defensively from what I saw, and I thought Joey has done a very good job within that defensive pattern and those defensive structures, because they held Gloucester off for that first 10 to 15 minutes, and then once everything had settled, then Sharks started playing their own game, and then they brought in their physicality, they brought in the set piece, the scrums, the line out. I mean, that rush D as well, closing Gloucester off for a very long period. I mean, I didn't think Gloucester even scored a try in that first half at all. And the Sharks basically, I mean, they were creative on attack. I mean, they had a well-balanced all-round play that was actually quite good to see, something that we haven't seen a lot when it comes to URC. But when it came to EPCR, they actually had a well-rounded and a well-balanced game against Gloucester. Jade, I see you're back. Any
Yes,
thoughts
can you hear me?
from your side? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. No, like you were spot on there. I mean, the Sharks came out of the blocks. I mean, that first scrum where they got the penalty with Ox Chow, it was the first or second scrum that Ox won, and that was we saw the mindset of the Sharks. They weren't going to let this opportunity slip to get back into, not for them to win this, it would be good for them to win the cup, but I mean, it was more so a loophole and an opportunity for them to get into the Champions Cup next year and play with the big boys. So this was a big opportunity. This was their game to salvage their season. That was, it was up and down, and there was more downs and ups this season. So they came out of the blocks firing. They looked a better team. Honestly, I was chatting to Scrumming Flower at halftime, and I said, I don't see Gloucester getting anywhere near the Sharks here. The Sharks are a different class over here, regardless of what the English pundits made of it. They were good, and I mean, once again, Masuku came in, and he was a real general again. But I mean, that whole team, even a guy like Pepsi Buthelezi, that we've been slating all season in terms of his physicality and everything, he brought it. And I think Plumtree, maybe we should give credit to him that he finally found a few weeks ago. We asked what is their DNA, so maybe this is their DNA, and maybe with those guys like Trevor and Esterhazy and those guys coming in next year, maybe this is the shape and the style that the Sharks is going to play next season, and it's effective because they have the tools, to play this game. So no, I was impressed with them. Gloucester, they weren't really in that game. The Sharks were the better team, better in close contact, better physicality, better scrum time, better line-out time. Defensively, they were good. No, I don't think anybody could complain with the result.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, at halftime, it was like 16-3 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, the boot of Masuku, that was incredible. He's really shaken things up with this team. Since he's been brought in, that backline looks very solid on attack. The backline looks good on D as well. But he's been very creative in the ways that he presents different pictures for the opposition defense. So it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint him into to one thing, or it's kind of hard to actually manage a player like that during games, because if your defensive pattern is to rush up against the Sharks, he chips over. Or does the cross kick, or there's an inside pass somewhere. But Vuyo, as a former backline player as well, I mean, what are your thoughts in how Masuku is actually being the general, as Jade said, with the Sharks backline?
Look, it's always going to be an outstanding performance if your flyer plays flat, and Masuku is one of those guys. If you guys remember, Bernard Foley was that kind of flyer that played flat on the line, and he gave the Aussies so much go forward. I can remember Bowden Barrett, when he first arrived as a 10, he was also that kind of flyer, was playing flat on the line. And if you look at when they played the British and Irish, they actually used Bowden quite a few times to take the ball up. So for me, I've always liked those kind of flyers that they play flat, because the defense becomes unsure of what's next. And Masuku, when I started working with him in 2019, I think I picked up that he is actually that kind of flyer, that he's playing flat. But what I've seen in the last, obviously the last season with him at the Cheetahs and the Sharks now, is that he's gotten a lot more confident in actually taking the ball up to the line, and even if he does take the contact, it's still okay. So whereas a couple of times before, I would see he was playing a little bit deeper, maybe because he was coached differently. That also could be a factor. But in terms of just the general being a fly half, if you look at his basics, just his basics, his passing, his kicking, and his finding space all over the field, it's top notch, and that's exactly what you need from a 10. And I guess that's why you guys are calling it a general, because he is in charge of that situation, of that game. And yeah, I think for me, he's really, really surprised me how much he's grown in these last 3 years. And I think it's also got to do with his maturity levels. He's definitely grown as a player.
No, 100%. He has definitely grown as a player. I mean, I think for me, I only started watching him at the Cheetahs, and I thought, well, this guy is actually quite a good player. Jade, now where does this leave us? We've got Manili Bok extension for 3 years. We've got Masuku on the other hand. I mean, 2 weeks ago we spoke about Libok and Sasha. Vuyo, I think you were also part of this conversation. But then now we're looking at Masuku and Mani Libok at the Stormers. Talk to me.
Look, Masuku is a real bolter. If Rassie was going to select him, it'd be a bolter, because I thought that you would have Noamba and Damien Willemse is out, and Sasha, filling in that third fly of position in the squad. But Masuku's really put up his hand. And for me, the positive thing of Masuku, Vuyo and Scoop, is he came into the Sharks from the Cheetahs, and he had to wait for his opportunity. And the Sharks were being bad. Cowan Bosch wasn't having the best of time. Bula Chamberlain wasn't having the best of time, and he waited for his opportunity. And how many times have we seen players, when they be given that opportunity, they feel the pressure, and they crumble, they don't perform, they don't take the opportunity. But this guy, he came in and he showed that he deserves to be there. He took charge of his team, and he's one of the main reasons why the Sharks started to win. So he has that mindset, and I'm sure that's positive in terms of what Rassie is looking at for Flau. So I really think Rassie would look at him, but I'm not sure, where, in what picking order it will be. It is it's evident that Andre Pollard is a little bit injury prone. He does pick up a few niggles here or there. So I do see him being, in that broader squad, and then he might get a few games later on in the season or so, depending on injuries. But he's definitely there now with, like I said, Damien Willemse, Nohamba, Sasha, and then Masuku as that third choice Flau. He can be one. Now with Willemse being injured, you might see him being in that squad now as well.
Oh, pretty nice, pretty good. I mean, the odds are definitely in his favor at this point in time, and I think under Tony Brown, Masuku could really become something something great within that Bok setup, because I mean Springboks do have currently probably the best forward packs, one of the best forward packs in the world at the moment. So I mean, operating behind such a forward pack and a flower of his caliber, that could only make him a better player going forward, to be honest. And yeah, basically looking at those elements currently. But the forward pack of the Sharks, which is something that we also haven't touched on, Jade, you were talking about the scrums, you were talking about Pepsi Buthelezi also putting his hand up and having a physical presence. I mean, looking at the Sharks back row, do you think they still need to add a bit of a few players into their squad going into next season if they want to compete at the Investec Championship, at URC, let's say top 4, top 5 teams, or playoff, be in the playoff element? Do they still need to add some more juice into that forward pack?
Definitely at Lucy's, and I think they got the Tutuka brother coming in there, so he will add, value in terms of the depth. They definitely need a few, harder or bigger boys up in the loose forward, carrying harder or a little bit more physical. But I mean, I like what I've seen from Pepsi recently. However, remember when you're going to play at that championship level or that next level, let's say the Heineken Cup, you have guys that's going to match your physicality up front. You're going to get some games where it's the best and Ox and those guys, they will come and they'll be matched against the Toulouse or, with Toulon. But those has a big pack. And then you're actually going to need your Lucy's, to get over the advantage line. Pepsi Buthelezi is not a physical number 8. He's never been that. That's not why he's playing for the Sharks. He has other good attributes. But I do also believe that in terms of their depth, they do need, 1 or 2 more Lucy's that's going to really get over the advantage line. I'm not sure what they have in their academy. I saw that number 7 that played for the junior Boks. Looks like a prospect. He's at the Sharks. I'm not quite sure, how far he is in terms of his development. But they're going to need a few, Lucy's just for depth. And, there's certain games. I mean, like if you're going to play your Toulouse and your Leinsters, those guys, you're going to need your Lucy's to get, over the advantage line well and carry hard and be busy and make a lot of tackles. I mean, Jack Wallace made 41 of them last night. So, yeah, we're going to need that.
All right, fair enough. Vuyo, any final thoughts with that Gloucester and Sharks final?
Yeah, just not much. Like you're saying, Scoop, the defense of the Sharks was actually very good. It goes to show again how important is stopping power on defense, just not to allow the opposition to go forward ball and get those offloads. So yeah, again, credit to Joey for what he's done with the Sharks at the moment, and hopefully they can take this form into next season.
Yeah. Congrats to the whole coaching staff there at the Sharks, being the only team in South Africa, only South African team, or the first South African team to win a European Championship, which is pretty good at the moment. But at the URC, they're not really doing so great, but they truly are finding form in the latter part or the back end of this particular season. And they face, do they face the Sharks in the next week or the final weeks of UFC? Bulls. Oh, jeez. Yes, Bulls. They Bull Sharks and Bulls. That's going to be quite an interesting game, actually. So, Ndabezindo, good luck to that. And Lucanio Am will probably be back as well. All right, now moving on to the Investec Championship, Leinster versus Toulouse. I don't know. All right, I've got a very tricky question for this particular one. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty, but I just wanted to get Vuyo, I'll start off with you. I think I posed the question as well. I mean, like, what do you guys think of the way coaches approach finals? That's the first question. The reason I asked this particular question is because throughout the season, I mean, Leinster has been scoring at ease, scoring more than 20, 30 points per game, etc., scoring multiple tries going into this final, or even playing their normal round-robin matches. as well. But looking at how coaches approach finals, I know everyone wants to win, but what I mean by this, I want us to look at how teams have been playing throughout the season versus how teams play in the finals. And looking at yesterday's final, 3-3, 6-6, 9-9, 12-12, and then looking at the way they try, or lack of trying, to be innovative to try and break down defense, looking at ways to create more try-scoring opportunities. I mean, I look at Leinster's possession, obviously, in that particular, they almost had 60% possession. They had pretty much ball control within that particular game. But Vickers, approaching finals, does it mean that you have to be conservative in how you approach the game, or do you change certain things? Do you change the way you attack? But what is it about finals that makes coaches and teams play in a more conservative way?
Yeah, it starts with the pressure. That's number one, and number two, it also goes down with finals aren't won by just obviously bringing the same mindset that you had before. It just means that teams try to take points as much as they can to put the other opposition under pressure. But again, it also depends with what kind of squad you have and what's your leadership like on the field. If your leadership is always the guys that are always holding back, they don't want to try new things and always trying to push the youngsters to follow their old structure, then obviously you'll get this kind of situation. But if you have a free, like including a couple of youngsters in your leadership group, where everyone can understand that, look, you're not just going to go out there and lose a game. You're going to go out there and fight for the game and fight for your spot. But there's going to come a time where we need to look at the flow of the game. And I think that's where Leinster missed it yesterday, because they couldn't get the flow in the game. And hence they started picking up those 3-pointers to obviously follow Toulouse, because Toulouse, they went in with that structure. We're going to take every point available, and that's what we're going to do, keep the scoreboard pressure. But with Leinster, they came out, they were playing. They were playing as like normal, trying to break them down, but they just couldn't get the flow. So in saying that, yes, there is a different approach, but before obviously we're going to dive into what I think was the deciding factor towards what I'm talking about now. So I just feel for me that the Leinster couldn't get the flow, and the fact that Toulouse went on 3-0, 6-0, 6-3, 9-3, it just gave them a little bit of pressure, and then they started going back to being conservative.
Fair enough. Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, we are spot on there in terms of the flow. However, I still believe that, both Toulouse and Leinster, they both play more or less a free-flowing game plan, and that's the way they like to throw the ball around or like to express themselves. I mean, if you look at the flow of Ntamak of Toulouse, I mean, he's got flair and he likes to throw the ball around. He likes to, feed his wingers. So I think that both teams had to adjust, and I still think that Toulouse they were always suited to adjusting to that game plan. And they also had the big match play that stood up on the day. For me, that counts. If you have a guy like Jack Wallace, like you mentioned, making 41 tackles in a final, I know it went to extra time. So, however, it's still a hell of a lot of tackles. I mean, we all shook our heads when Peter Stevetoy made 27 in the World Cup final, and Jack Wallace came and did this, against Leinster. So for me, I believe that, Toulouse, they were better set up for this game. I think Leinster, the mindset of Leinster, going into the third final now, losing the third final, and, Toulouse came out and they thought, okay, we've got rugby heritage here, we've got rugby prestige here, and we're gonna win this final, no matter what. So for me, I think Leinster, it doesn't make them a bad team. They're still a world class outfit. So don't make them a bad team. It doesn't make Ireland a bad team, but it's really something that they have to look at. I mean, it's the third final in a row where they didn't have it all their own way. Last year, remember, Scoop, they came out firing and they took a massive lead, and then La Rochelle came back in, where this year they were a little bit more static. They didn't get the free flowing of the game. So I still believe that Leinster is a good team, but they really need to check their mindsets, going to another final. Maybe it's just a whole psychological thing to do with Ireland in finals.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is quite strange. I was also not impressed by the attack shape. I thought there was a lot different. Maybe the Johnny Sexton element is also missing within that Leinster attack as well. But Vickers, the nitty gritty. What were your analytical? Yeah, English. Anyway, what was your analytical view within this particular game? Where do you think Leinster lost it, or where do you think Toulouse won it? Was it the hand of God that James Lowe trying to tap down a pass or intercept a pass? Was it the red card with Arnold? I mean, at the end of the day, Toulouse did play with 14 by the end of that game after copying a red card as well. But yeah, what was your analytical view within this particular final?
Yeah, so I think for me it was pretty simple. Leinster got in without having the feeling of being threatened by Toulouse, because they have a good defense structure, they have a very good attacking structure. I don't think they went in with the mindset that the opposition could bring something different. And that's exactly what Toulouse did. If you guys look at the amount of turnovers at breakdown, it's unheard of in such a game, because we couldn't call that's an international level game, that one. But the amount of disruptions at breakdown, the amount of just the penalties at breakdown or the turnovers, it was crazy, because that's exactly what I think Toulouse went into that game. That's why I spoke about the flow of the game. We know Leinster always get quick rucks and move the ball quickly, and their players are very skillful, even their forwards. But in this particular game, they didn't get that flow. And every single time they were getting into the 22, someone is making a turnover. Every single time they were getting in close and starting to pile up the pressure, there's a turnover. So they didn't. That's the flow that I'm talking about. So for me, the one thing that I did pick up is that breakdown ferociousness from Toulouse, and again, if a team like Leinster doesn't get that flow, doesn't get that attack shape they wanted, they start to panic, and then they start to think of something different, and that's when they lost it. They've got great players, quality players. And if we look at one or two things in that game that just didn't go their way, it's just, it's just all the pressure that came through. But for me, that game was won in the breakdown. I think Toulouse brought in that something different in the breakdown. They were flying in from all angles. And I think that's when Leinster couldn't adjust and fix it.
Interesting. Jade, just last week, we were talking about rugby DNA within Ireland, right? And you spoke about the amount of volume or the amount of times where Irish players just dedicate their efforts into the breakdown. And this weekend, it was almost non-existent at the amount of protecting the ball, as Vuyos just pointed out. What are your thoughts regarding this particular aspect, and also what did you analytically view as one of the key points within this particular game yesterday?
Okay, so what are the key points I viewed? And it's obvious. You have Ntamaku, who's one of the best first fives in the world, directing his team around, and then you had Frawley, who's really, I think, he's still playing in 26 and shadow at Leinster. There's still a lot of question marks, every time he goes out in the field. So that was a big difference for me, was the quality of number 10s yesterday. I feel the 9-10 combo. And we've raved about James Gibson Park being one of the best players in the world. But I mean, you got outshone yesterday, the two of them by Dupont and Ntamak, So that for me is actually, where the difference in class was yesterday. But in terms of what Vuyo said, and I also agree with it, was the breakdown. And what happened also yesterday, we saw Leinster, changing the shape in the game as well, uh, committing more cleaners to the ruck, trying to and unsettling himself, getting out of that 3-pod or 2-pod system that they're so used to, and committing more to the ruck because the ball was slower, they weren't getting quick recycle. I don't always believe in continuity, ruck after ruck, being patient, and then the half gap will come, and the gap will come, the line break will come. They believe in that. That's what Leinster believe in. But I felt yesterday, they lost it at the breakdown, similar to what happened in the quarterfinal as well. Something similar to that, where they lost it at the breakdown and they changed their shape. And I'm not sure if we, as a coach, I mean, do you really go in and who gives a call? Is it the coach that gives a call? Is it your first five that gives a call? To change your shape and attack, and commit more cleaners to the ruck, or change your pod system, because I felt they did that yesterday, and that was actually for me in a surprisingly way. I felt they could have just been a little bit more patient, cleaned faster, or what I'm trying to say now, but look at different options in terms of carrying the ball up.
Yeah, I think Jade, it's a matter of the two coaches. I mean, I don't know if they have a breakdown coach, but the attack coach and the breakdown coach will probably look at bringing maybe one of the Lucy's or the hooker from one of the touchlines to come and join the middle pods, so that he just roams around and looks for, obviously, to give that extra protection. But then again, like you say, that takes your take shape. It breaks down your take shape. So it's probably most probably coming from the coaching staff, and because they saw that there was a bit of a threat, and unfortunately, because you don't get tested in those kind of situations a lot during the competition itself, to do it in the final, it just makes everyone change their mindset and brings in a little bit of panic within the squad. And we all know what pressure does to players, I mean, to athletes in general. So I think it was a matter of this was changed during the game, whereas maybe if they'd had that situation before, earlier on in the season, they could have been having those kind of game plan going into different games. But like they've had so much easy run to get there, so I don't think they would have been prepared for something like that.
Fair enough. I mean, how much influence, because do you think maybe a Jacques, obviously only just started in December or January, but like how much influence do you think Jacques maybe might have had within this Leinster side this season? But I mean, obviously throughout the whole season, I mean, cameras have been focused on Leo Cullen, who's the current coach. But how much? Because my thinking is or was that maybe Leinster in this particular game they will actually focus on just defending and let Toulouse actually try and attack and try and burn out of steam basically, and then Leinster comes back into the game and obviously presents their attack shape, presents that axis between 9 and 10 or 10 and 12, have a lot of wingers coming around, fullbacks joining the back line, loose forwards also basically hitting it up at midfield, etc. They've got one of the biggest locks in the world at the moment. You would think they would use them to a greater effect in terms of hitting either in those trenches or hitting it up in the middle, because I don't think the centers within Toulouse were tested that much, if at all, in that particular game. So hence I brought in the question of innovative ways to kind of break down defenses. I mean, even if a defense is great, there you have to come up with ways to or try and improvise. Because I mean, when you're on the field, as Jade has asked, I mean, who instead of the coaches making that decision, when you're on the field of play, do you think captains or whoever's around understands what's happening, sees what's happening, and basically kind of brings everyone together and says, guys, this is what's happening, X, Y, Z. We didn't expect this, but now this is how we attack, or this is how we present a different shape or different pictures going forward, Vickers.
Yeah, look, that's why you have leaders in the group, in your team, because of such situations. So to go back to the first question, I think Jacques came in as a World Cup winning coach. So I think there would have been excitement within the management of what Jacques is going to bring to the system. And obviously then the current coach that is there, to allow Jacques to give in his input, or to get his input, if I can say. But at the end of the day, it still boils down to the relationship between two humans. And it's only the first season, and these guys have worked together. Jacques came in in a winning system with Leinster, so he also would have been very respectful on how he wants to come in and influence the system itself. So it's a matter of just understanding and the cohesion between the coaches. And I don't know, obviously, we all don't know how it's being treated like, but I think it's a matter of for me, it's still the first season. Both coaches, in fact, it's still the first season, so they both working out on how to run the system. And I always say give combinations chances, give combinations a little bit more time, so that also they can understand each other. And obviously for the players as well, for the first time, the players are hearing a different accent if I can call it that way. They're used to the English accent, they're used to the Irish accent, but now to hear an Afrikaans accent in speaking English, that also is a different factor. Unfortunately, it is like that. If in terms of the players on the field, 100%, your captain, your leadership group should all be in that mode that they can spot weaknesses, that they can try fix, or they can spot strengths that they need to almost enhance within the game. But again, it boils down to who you have in that leadership group. So there are teams that don't have that, unfortunately, but there are teams that are good teams but have guys that will lead from the front, but not necessarily very game orientated in terms of not like, if you look at the Lions, if I make an example, if you look at the Lions when Warren Whiteley was still the captain, you could feel that Elton Janchi's, Warren Whiteley, they were all in sort of like leadership, spotting the weaknesses, spotting what they needed to do. But if you look at a team with the Springboks, for example, Sia had to get help from Dwayne, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that the leadership group is important as a whole, not just the one person in the field. I hope that answers a little bit of your question.
Yeah, fair enough. Jade?
No. I just want to raise this to the group and everybody. I mean, Leinster has been without silverware now for 3 years almost. Is it panic stages at the club? I mean, can we call them the bridesmaids? Always the bridesmaid, never the bride? Or do we really just see that they've been unlucky? But I mean, it's now the third season that they might not win any trophies. So I've seen coaches being sacked, for not winning a trophy for the first season. So yeah, I think it's a panic stage or what at Leinster.
Oof, it's a tough one to, I mean, always a bridesmaid, never the bride. It kind of fits the purpose at this point. But I don't know what they need to kind of get over the line, because, I mean, they're playing good rugby. They've got very good systems. They've got a very good foundation. They've got very good structures. It's just the final. I mean, it's just that one hurdle that they're still struggling to get over at this point in time, which is obviously, I can imagine it's probably troubling. It's probably concerning when it comes to the club itself, because they've put in so much money as well into what they have, and they're also getting a guy like Jordie Barrett next season. Maybe that's why they are actually investing in some players coming to play for them to kind of get them over that hurdle. Maybe they need to tweak a few things within their structures. But I think going into next season with Jacques fully committed to the whole season, maybe they can come up with better plans and structures, because I mean their players were saved, right? Saved up in previous matches or previous weeks when it comes to URC, because they saved them up for this particular final. And to not come away with silverware will probably raise a lot of question marks, having rested players. To be honest, I mean, any organization that's running professionally, yeah, there needs to be a sit down, there needs to be a chat, a conversation on how to move forward from this, and how to move forward as well. I think those are some of the things they'll probably go through, maybe in the next weeks. Also looking at the international season for most of these Leinster guys. They're coming to South Africa to face the Springboks, which is also not going to be an easy feat, right? Playing the Springboks in the Highveld. Man, this is really going to be a tough season for Irish footy at this point in time. I can't imagine last year losing in a quarterfinal, maybe thinking you can make things up now. It's going to be a tough URC as well, going into the next couple of weeks, because every team's tails will be up against Leinster, understanding how they play, and also having been used to them in terms of how they actually play. Yeah, and also by the looks of things, it doesn't look like they will be hosting any playoffs at home, if they continue in this trajectory. We've got Ndabezindo who wanted to share something with us. Let's have a listen. Ndabezindo, you can go ahead, bro. Yeah, Ndabezindo, you can go ahead.
Hello, how's it, Scoop? How's it, Jade? How's it, Vuyo? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, good. Yeah, just to touch on the Leinster and Toulouse game, I think that was quite an awesome game of rugby. Personally, the first game of rugby I've ever seen go to extra time. That's if you exclude the Super Rugby golden points that's happening this season. So yeah, I wonder what Ian Foston and John Cohen have to think about that. Do they still regard it as a spectacle? Because there was no tries in the first 80 minutes. But yeah, more so, I just wanted to give a special shout out to Leinster and all the Dubliners that are listening. I think they had a fully deserved loss for disrespecting the URC again. I said yesterday that I don't believe Leinster have what it takes to win the URC. I think you guys have backed me up with the bridesmaids concept, and that they are close enough to get close, but they are not good enough to get all the way. And I'm still of the firm belief that they use Champions Cup as an excuse. We all know rugby is an abrasive sport, but competing in more than one competition is nothing new in sport. It's certainly nothing new in rugby. The Blue Bulls won Super Rugby and Currie Cup in 2009. Crusaders won Super Rugby and NPC in 2017. The Series won the Prem and Champions Cup in 2019. Toulouse top 14 and Champions Cup in 2021. They could well do it this year. The list just goes on. So for me, if you want to be known as the best team, I think they are a world-class team, but they can't call themselves the best team in the world. You have to beat everyone, everywhere, every time. And I'm a little annoyed at the concept of scoffing at your domestic competition as if it's something below you, and then running back to the domestic competition when you get booted out of the international competition. Like a guy going for the girl at the VIP at the club and then going for the rebound when he gets rejected by the VIP girl. URC is not the rebound girl. You are either fully committed or you are out. And history tells us that, Leinster has not been fully committed to the URC. And I know people make the comparison with the Bulls sending what they called the beating to Northampton. But the issue there, I believe, was travel. It wasn't competing on two different fronts, because Bulls are more than comfortable competing on two different fronts. I mean, I'm just thinking of last year. The Bulls played a URC game and a Currie Cup game on the same day. And there are a few players that played both of those games on that day. So the issue was always boarding an 11-hour flight in one direction to play a game, and then boarding an 11-hour flight in the other direction to play another game 5 days later. If Leinster had to do the same thing, there would be less outrage. I mean, if Leinster had to play the Bulls in the Champions Cup quarterfinals this weekend, and then have at Loftus, and then have to go and play, say, Munster next weekend at the RDS, they would definitely have two different squads. And I believe there would be a little bit less outrage. I think they did just the same thing last week. So, big ups for Leinster for losing it again and again. I think there's a thin line between confidence and hubris, and some of my Dublin friends have crossed over into the hubris section, and you pay for hubris. I don't think they will win the URC. I think everyone does have their tails up. I think they let themselves down by fielding a few weakened sides, and they are now sitting in third, possibly even going into fourth. And without that home semi or home final, they might need to travel to South Africa, and I think Bulls will put them to the sword if they come to us. But other than that, I do think maybe even Munster might put them to the sword in the quarterfinals, not the quarterfinals, the semi-finals. But yeah, that is just my rant at Leinster. But we'll see how the URC goes.
Well. What a rant. You can take that script up now, Davizindo. Obviously, you were reading from a well-written script. Vickers.
This is my celebratory rant.
Cheers, mate. Vickers, you want to share something?
No, look, I just wanted to comment on the fielding of weakened sides and fielding and not respecting the URC in terms of that. I think I disagree fully that they don't respect the URC. I think they do respect the URC, but in every province, if in any team or professional setup, if you have two competitions running at the same time or three competitions running at the same time, you tend to gravitate to the one that's giving you the most rewards, which is, at this point, we all know it's the Investec Cup Champions Cup that is more prestigious than URC. So I don't think they disrespecting it. They using their players wisely. We've seen it in football. If you in the competition for the league, Champions League, FA Cup, you tend to use your second stringers for the FA Cup and some of your weaker games in the league, so that you protect your team towards Champions League. So it is normal. It is very much normal to feel the weakened side. For example, we spoke about it, I think, in the last place I was in. If Leinster flew to play in South Africa 2 weekends and then fly back to play the semi-final of the Investec Champions Cup, it wouldn't have been the same. We wouldn't have seen we actually saw that they struggled in that game, but the chances are they wouldn't have came back in the second half to finish it off. So that's what I'm saying, is that it's all about periodization. It's all about player management. It's all about player welfare, which is why certain teams do tend to field second stringers. I mean, the Sharks did it before the final. They fielded a second stringer at home against the Dragons. I think it was the Dragons, if I'm not mistaken, and they lost that game. So it's just a matter of preference. It's such a matter of which cup is more prestigious to that coach. We can see now Leinster will probably field their best team going forward for the rest of the games, and I don't think they are in a danger to finish less than fourth, if I'm not mistaken. I think They have, I think, 60 points. I mean, Hughes, our statsman, is here. I think they have 60 points, and I think the top team has about 63 points or 64. So I'm not sure. I don't think they have a risk of getting not getting the home quota. They'll definitely, and if they keep on pumping more points in the next few weeks, I think they'll find themselves back in hosting the playoffs at home.
Hugh, the stats man, I see you. You wanted to share something?
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, guys. Sorry I joined late. I'm just back from a family gathering. Just quickly to what Vuyo was saying is that Leinster can finish no lower than fourth. They're actually in third at the moment on points difference ahead of Glasgow. Glasgow have got Zebra last. So Glasgow's points difference is 25 points worse than Leinster, but it is feasible that Glasgow could have a better differential than Zebra by 25 points more than the differential that Leinster get against Connacht at home. It'll be very interesting to see what team Leinster put out against Connacht. It'll be at home, their last URC game of the season. Whether they will ask that Champions Cup final team to go again, I'm sure they won't. They won't do 15 changes because they can't. I don't think any team can do 15 changes. So that's interesting to see. But like the guy said, if they have to go away in a semi-final, especially if they have to go down to Pretoria, that's a really tough ask for them to do, and they'll have to send a full squad to have any chance of winning that game, which they can. I do believe they're good enough to beat the Bulls in Pretoria, but it's a question of whether they can attack that with the grit and the emotion that they need to, because they're going to be feeling pretty damn low at the moment. In terms of why they lost this, I mean, you got to remember that they went into extra time with points level. I just look at that Leinster team, and they're a fantastic team, but I look at it and I think, who's your twisted genius? Who's your X factor? Who's the guy to drag you out of a hole if you find yourselves there? Who's your difference maker? And I think their best player, probably in terms of talent compared to other players around the world, is probably Dan Sheehan, the hooker, who I think is incredible. I think even they're very, very, very good other players, of which they have lots, like Doris, Gibson Park, a few others, Keenan, are world class. I'm not knocking them in terms of ability, but are they X factor players? I think that's the question. If you look at what Toulouse has in terms of Dupont, some other players as well, these are X factor players. These are players who can produce something special. And I'm just not sure that, who's Leinster's Cheslin Colby? Who's the one to do something not in the script? Who's the one to break away and produce a moment of magic? I'm just not sure that Leinster have that player. So I think that's a reason why that when you're playing against Leinster, you know what you need to do, because you know that none of their players are ever going to go off script. So I feel like that in order to get to that next level for Leinster, they maybe in a funny way need to get worse by having players who might throw a 5 or 6 out of 10 every now and again, but then will produce an 11 out of 10 on the day. So maybe that's something they need to look at in terms of their recruitment moving forward.
Fair enough. Jade, jumping into Super Rugby quickly. I mean, yeah, there were...
Very quickly, bro. The Super Rugby happened this weekend. The Blues lost, so fine.
Yeah, I knew it. That's why I was bringing it up. All right. No Super Rugby this week because the Auckland Blues lost against the Crusaders, bottom of the table Crusaders. And this time around, what we can, before we jump into the rugby DNA, we're looking at France and Italy this time in the series. But Damien Willemse is sidelined for 4 months. Vuyo, actually Jade, who takes over the 15 jersey for the Springboks?
Well, let's go on form, and on current form, Valerio takes the place 15. I mean, I think he's deserving to have one last year or so for the Boks, and try to get to 100 caps. I mean, there's a few games that he can play. he's more than capable of playing against Ireland in those first two games. I mean, he's in good form. He hasn't lost any rhythm. So I think Sampo Villero starts at 15 in David Willemse's position. And now it's another opportunity for somebody again. Maybe we'll see the rebirth of a Warwick Galant into the squad again. Or like I said earlier, Masuku comes in, maybe we'll see that. But yeah, or even Fassi as well. But for me, I think starting-wise, Villero, I mean, he's been on form. He's been comfortable this season, and he's been a difference maker in the Bulls team this year.
Vickers, who's your number one choice and who comes off the bench?
It's not my number one choice, but as Jade said, I think they'll probably go for Villero. I think they'll go for Villero based on the fact that it's experience and they need obviously to win this series. As Rusty has said in the media that they will not compromise on performance. So I think they'll probably go with the tried and tested Villero. But my choice would be Arendse. My choice would be currently Arendse at 15, Mapimpi at 11. I'll be more happy if I see that. I think for me, Kurtley is always he spent a season playing for the Bulls at 15, and obviously he was shifted to wing because of the Boks as well. So I would love to see Kurtley, Arendse, Chesn Kobe 14, Mapimpi 11. I think that'd be probably the best three that we can pull out there.
Jade, you honestly believe that Villero is having a better season than Apelele Fas?
Not according to stats. But obviously, if we're looking at, what he's done to the Bulls, he's come in and he's made a difference, and he's been playing in a team that's been winning. So yeah, I would stick with the tried and tested. Villero would be my 15. That's why he ages it. That doesn't mean that when he's been playing better than Fassi. I think Fassi has the most running meters or line break stats, something like it in the UFC this season. Also take note that Fassi has played more games in the UFC than Willie, but still, he's had an awesome season in a struggling team.
Fair enough. Hugh, your thoughts on this 15 debacle?
I can't believe no one's voting for Warwick Galant. Surely we all want to see that. I thought, even though he scored a try, I thought Fassi was pretty poor against Gloucester. I have been a bit of a fan of him, and I do think he's got a shot at that Springbok jersey, but I think he was poor in the Challenge Cup final. I think another player who I'm surprised isn't getting talked about as much, or maybe it's just because I'm drinking the Lions Kool-Aid at the moment, Quan Horn has had an incredible season for the Lions. And with his cool, calm collectedness, is he going to be a help to maybe some of the more exciting halfbacks that they're going to have in the team? Yeah, if they're going to go Masuku at 10, maybe they don't need that. But if the plan is to go Libok at 10, is someone like Horn going to be a good foil for that? I don't know. So I think probably I expect them that this summer they will go Leroux. In terms of if we're looking outside of Willemse and Leroux, I think Fassi is probably the most likely, in my opinion, but I do think that it's not clear. I think there are other players who are yet to get a cap for the Springboks who arguably have had better seasons. Or they could, like they said, they could play one of Arendse or Colby out of position. Although they can play fullback, obviously, but it's not their number one position. And I think that would work just as well.
Fair enough. Sticking with you, Hugh, Rugby DNA series is upon us. Looking at France and Italy. So we'll start off with the French flair. So Hugh, when you think of France and rugby, what comes to mind? What's their DNA from since you started watching them or have heard people talk about them? Is the French flair a myth or is French flair a real thing?
French flair is very much a real thing. It's funny if you watch the top 14, the only two real flair teams in that are Bordeaux and Toulouse. And Toulouse didn't actually do that much flair in the final yesterday. There's something quite interesting about their performance. But the French flair is definitely a thing, and they're definitely the most intoxicating when they're doing that. And the French need to be happy when they're playing. They need to be expressing themselves. They need to feel a freedom when they're on the pitch. If you try and over-structure them, over-coach them, I don't think that works for them. Ronan O'Gara, when he's going to La Rochelle, he said that for him, there was a learning process of, I can't coach these guys the same as I would coach the Irish guys. These guys need to be smiling when they're playing. They need to feel like they have that trust from me as their coach to go out and express themselves. So I think you have to have that in France. I think coaches who try and impose too much of a structure on a French team will always find it very difficult. So for me, yeah, identity is definitely flair. They've obviously got a very big pack at the moment, but you have to remember that France is arguably the most rugby obsessed nation. Now, I know that's a big shout, especially with all the South Africans on this call, but if you just look at the size of the top 14 in terms of attendances and in terms of commercial revenue, and you look at the Pro D2 adding to that as well, then no other league really comes close in that term. So the French rugby is very insular. It's very unique. It's its own thing. It doesn't really copy or go along with anybody else. And I think that's what makes it special. I think the French will always be their own thing. And I think that's a good thing for world rugby.
Now, Vickers, your thoughts on France as a rugby nation growing up? I mean, what was their identity? What was the one thing that you thought about when Springboks were going to play France, New Zealand was going to play France, or what France was going to play any other team? Was it their forward pack dominance? Was it their backline fluidity in terms of how much flair or how much freedom, as Hughes spoke about now, they had going into matches? What was their identity for you?
Yeah, for me, it was always continuity rugby. I think that's what French rugby has always been about. It's continuity, not having a lot of breakdowns, but moving the ball quickly. And I think that in a way, I think that's why we've never really focused on, they never really focused on set pieces. They were more of, they didn't go in the nitty-gritties of scrumming and maul and driving malls. They were always, or get the ball, let's play, let's get to the backs. So for me, I think growing up, I knew that French rugby was about continuity. And obviously they've had to change because they saw that they were not competing against the top, obviously the Southern Hemisphere teams, based on the fact that they didn't focus too much on their forwards. And I think now they're trying to strike the balance between the two. As you have said, Ronan would have definitely gotten a big wake-up call when he got there and found that these guys actually like to throw the ball around, even in the worst, if we could say, the not the worst, the tightest positions on the field. Even in the R22, they would throw it around. So he probably had to learn a little bit about that. And I mean, for me, that's what I think French rugby is about. It's about continuity. It's about that excitement. It's about putting the ball to hand. We could almost call it an entertainment. For them, they are entertaining in that sense that they give those chicken wing passes. They'll give an offload in an unexpected position.
The Harlem Globe French Trotters. Jay, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Scoop, I think if I can test your memory here, in Buyo's memory, the first real, videos that we've seen of France in Africa has been on the Serge Blanc with that try against Australia, and that really, shows what France and French rugby is all about. And I mean, even the Philippe Sella, the last game, the All Blacks lost that, or Philippe St. Andre, one of the two of them, but they scored the winning try at Eden Park. So that's the last game. The All Blacks lost at Eden Park, also been, ball thrown from, from their half and ball thrown around. But I mean, if you're looking at where we become accustomed with French guys, I mean, we had a few French guys that played in the Currie Cup. I mean, the likes of Thierry Lacroix, Laurent Caban, Olivier Romain in 1995, 96, and then we had Freddy Michalak, playing for Sharks as well, and they brought that play, Thomas Castagnier, all of those guys, So that's how we become accustomed to French rugby. And like I always said, a happy French camp is a concerning French camp for me, because then they're gonna be, they might just lose the game. But as soon as they start doing what they did in 2011, start fighting in and having trouble in the camp, then they come out the next game and they might just bring a big surprise. So that's been France rugby and French rugby, but we love it. I'm not used to this French team now, because like I said a few months ago, it's the first time that I can sit and honestly think, and I can name the French 23, the strongest 23, and I can name all of their players. I mean, previously, there was always surprises here or there. So showing that, I don't know if it's because as South Africans, we become more accustomed to European rugby, or maybe just there's been some more consistency under Gauthier, they're not so much that play and that inconsistent team and ringing surprises left, right, and center. So, yeah, but the French DNA, has been flair, being controversy and being entertaining.
100%, 100%. Moving into Italy, I mean, I understand we haven't really had a lot to look at within the Italian aspect. I mean, they've been part of Six Nations now for just over 20 years. They've really grappled with getting accustomed to playing top tier nations. And I think now we're starting to see them compete a bit more. But in terms of identity, Jade, I mean, what is their rugby identity? I mean, are they quite similar? Would you say they're also quite similar to an Argentina type of identity in terms of emotions, in terms of, I don't know, really. I really can't pinpoint what it is about
it's
Italy.
Tricky, because I would also say that, similar to Argentina in terms of emotion, but I think with what they are building now, with Benetton and with his current crop, I think this is the identity that, the Italians want to play. I mean, we've seen similar with the under-20s. They play a similar style and a similar brand. So I think this that they're doing now is the current identity that they want to install in Italian rugby. But previously, because, they've had a brilliant leader in Sergio Parisi for the past decade, that now we've become accustomed to that emotional aspect, and that playing on emotions, getting up for the game, because they've all looked to him as a talisman, But I still think what we see now in the Six Nations, I think that's the way they see their identity in Italy, playing the ball quicker, having exciting backline, having loose forwards that's busy, harder the breakdown, getting quick ball through backline that's entertaining. I think that for me is Italian rugby. I think that's a shape they want to bring in now in the rugby, and I think that's what they feel is their identity.
Yeah, fair enough. Hugh, your thoughts?
I think, kind of like Jade was alluding to, I think Italy's in a process of reinventing itself at the moment. And what got them to being the stage where they were admitted into the Six Nations was mostly based on a forward pack and playing, physically dominating rugby. And I think they have learned that I think they realised quite a long time ago, to be fair, that they needed to change, that they needed to evolve. And they went through a weird period where they were trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. Whereas now they've just gone, right, okay, let's actually put money into developing the talent. And this is when you're starting to see players like Manincello coming through, who is absolutely sensational. And you're going to get Pani, looks like another player who can come through. So they're still short in a couple of positions. I think scrum half maybe is somewhere they could look to bring. They need someone to really nail down that jersey. They are kind of working on themselves in terms of having a complete all-round game. So I think it will be a little while before we can firmly say what's their DNA, because I think they are changing themselves, and the rugby's going through a lot of growth in Italy as well, becoming more popular. We see Benetton are looking to extend their stadium to get more fans in, which is fantastic. So, but previously when Italy have got results, it's always been like almost shut your eyes and just run head down as fast as you can. And if you come out at the end of it, you've won, it's kind of almost a miracle almost. And, we've seen them so many times in years gone by of they could give you a game for 60 minutes and then they just completely fall apart. So that's what I mean when I say they're just trying to reinvent themselves at the moment. I think they're on the right path. Although, to be fair, we've had one good Six Nations after a terrible World Cup campaign, a really awful World Cup campaign. So we'll wait and see. And then I'll tell you what I think the identity of this Italian side is in maybe a couple of years. If they can maybe finish third in the Six Nations, maybe pick up a few good results in the autumn, building a winning habit, then I think we'll know a lot more about what the future of Italian rugby holds.
Vickers.
Look, I think both Hugh and Jade have said it. I think there's nothing for me to add. But one thing I do know about Italian rugby is that they are a passionate group. They play with a lot of emotions. I think having faced Italy with the teams that I've coached in a couple of times, we always knew that the moment something starts not going their way, they do lose that mentality, that mental game, and they start doing things that are outside their structure. But as the guy said, I think they're rebuilding, they're going in the right direction, definitely. And I think it's just a matter of making sure that their player pool to pick from is a lot more, so they can actually establish themselves within the top teams. But as the guy said, for me, very similar to Argentina in terms of how they play emotional.
Yeah, fair enough, gents. Yeah, any final thoughts, Vickers, before we close off?
Yeah, just looking forward to the last few games of URC. I think that's going to be quite interesting to see how that's going to pan out. And then saw that Hugo Keenan has also joined the Island Sevens, so the stars are coming through.
Yeah, nice. That's good to see a lot of 15s guys wanting to win a gold medal in the Olympics in Paris 2024. Hugh, your final thoughts?
It's a bank holiday here in the UK, so I'm looking forward to having a day off work where I'm not spending it all watching rugby.
Nothing wrong with watching rugby all day. Jade, always hot in Bloemfontein.
Nah, it's getting cold now, bro. It's getting cold. No, listen. Super Rugby, I mean, you got to look at the weekend. I think top four solidified, but we need to look at who ends first, second, or third, because, I mean, the Brumbies could end top, the Blues could end top, and then the Canes could end top, and also will the Highlanders and the Chiefs play spoilers this weekend? Will they send their strongest teams through? Also, who gets that final spot, that 8th spot between the Drua, the Force, and the Crusaders? But the Drua playing the Rebels at home in Fiji. I think they have the inside land. They should end in 8th year. So I think they should end Rob Penny's Crusaders career by the weekend.
Yeah, all right, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Vickers. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jade. And thank you, Dabazinto, for your input as well. Guys, thank you very much for listening in. And we'll see you guys next week. Next week, the biggest one of all DNA series, the All Blacks and the Springboks. It's a big one next week. You don't want to miss this. You do not want to miss this. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Sunday and have a great week ahead. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.